Hey everybody, it's Kneecap here, and in this video I'm going to be giving my feedback for Retribution Paladin Rework. This is something I did in the beta a lot as I did new builds and stuff. I give my feedback on it and, my thoughts on it, and I think it'd be, kind of smart to do that for this as well, as, we still have a couple months before this will be live or whatever, so there's still time, to make changes and get thoughts from people. Obviously, these huge changes came out on Tuesday. I did a video about it with my first reactions to it. It wasn't up on the PTR yet. It subsequently was on the PTR later that night. However, it was really janky. A lot of the stuff wasn't implemented right. Some of the stuff was like in different places than what it is now. This looks more complete than it did before. There's still some things wrong with it. I'm not getting into, that's not my feedback about like the actual like, they're gonna move stuff to the right spots on their own. It's going to be more about, how I feel about it, I guess. And so yeah, we'll talk both about the Paladin side and the Rat side. On the Paladin side, under my camera is just the Seal of Order and then Fading Light. If I'm completely honest, I haven't really dug into what the difference between these two things are. But you have Seal of Order, Fading Light. I have Seal of Order taken right now just because I assume I know what that one does based on live game. So on the PTR here, we'll go through and look at this. So one change is, we'll start on the Paladin side. I kind of like the Paladin setup overall. The bottom is the only part that I kind of had some qualms with. Let's go ahead and talk about everything though. So we start with Freedom and Hammer of Wrath now, so that's one less. We get some utility without having to spend a point, because normally you would have to spend a point to even have Blessing of Freedom, which absolutely stunk. And then, similar stuff here. Obduracy is way up here. In a lot of builds, you're probably gonna end up taking this unless you have to bring Devo Aura for your guild or something like that. I have a kind of a Mythic Plus attempt build or partial build of a Mythic Plus build, so that's why I have Cleanse taken. Devo Aura is there. Turn Evil. I like Turn Evil being up here because there's only a few instances where you want Turn Evil. Like I know No Coup Defensive has like a thing for Turn Evil, and you could maybe find other places to use Turn Evil at. It's right up here at the top, so if you do need to switch to it, it's just really easy. You take off Cleanse for Turn Evil, you take off Obduracy for Turn Evil, take off Lay Hands for Turn Evil. Like, it's like a really quick fix. So I like that being right there. For something that you don't take very often, it's nice to have it somewhere where it's not as buried as it was before. Aura with Vengeance. So this is the new Aura. So when you it's instead of like it being only for yourself, it's like a raid wide damage increase. Someone's calculated to be almost a 2% damage increase, basically to have somebody running this Aura. It wouldn't surprise me if it got nerfed a little bit or something like that, because right now the way things stand, you would want a Rat Aura and a Devo Aura, for example, in your raid group. And while they always make like certain classes mandatory, like to have one of them, it's very rare that they like would make two classes seem mandatory, like two of one class seem mandatory, like that you have to have two Paladins. So I could see that being changed in some way, or nerfed to where it's not as big of a deal. Like I said, Obduracy's moved up here. This is speed and avoidance. It's just, something nice to have. With all of their other defenses, it actually kind of feels nice just to have even more avoidance. And we'll talk about maybe that getting nerfed as well. The big avoidance trait. We have Divine Steed, which is no longer on global cooldown. Blinding Light Repentance, still the same. Greater Judgment's here. They've moved Swift Fist of Justice over here. With it being over here, you no longer really have to take it. Right now on the PTR, it won't let me take these points though, however. But this is something that you could probably play with points-wise, to maybe take Devo Aura if you need it, to take Punishment, for example. Obviously, depending on what kind, again, like I said, this is like a Mythic Plus style build, so I have Rebuke taken. There'll be raid fights where you have no interrupts. If that's the case, you can actually skip Rebuke pretty easily and go around it, put your talents into other things if you're not going to be needing an interrupt. That's all the same, kind of. Then here we have Holy Aegis. This is your armor and critical strike. That's about the same spot it was. Right here, we'll just talk about this real quick because I have that selected. Golden Path, that's just your consecration heal. That's the same. Avenging Wrath is now 1 minute base. So it's something I've talked about before, but they're making Avenging Wrath 1 minute base. And then over here, if you take Crusade, it goes to 2 minutes. So basically, they're saying Avenging Wrath isn't powerful enough to be a 2 minute cooldown on its base. but Crusade is. And so I think what they're identifying is, everyone picks Crusade because it's stronger. Well, then the other one maybe shouldn't be a 2-minute cooldown, and you should have like a 1-minute option. I definitely think that could see some run in Mythic Plus. So you could have wings up for every single pull. Justification, Judgment's damage increase. It's not a great talent, but it is throughput. Like I said, punishment. So now when we successfully interrupt, if we have punishment taken, we cast this Crusader Strike, which there's all other stuff with Crusader Strike, right? That could trigger like an Empyrean Power, for example. Like Forge Blessing. I find it very odd that this is on the Paladin tree. Divine Storm is on the Paladin tree, not the Ret tree. But I kind of like it right now because there's too many talents on the Ret side, and we'll talk about that. So for any AoE situation, you would be grabbing this pretty much. And then, for straight single target, when you're not using Divine Storm, you would just ignore that and, again, put it into other more useful things. You still have your Pop, you still have your Sack, you still have your Recompense and Sacrifice. I wish I knew how to say that. Recompense maybe. And then Improved Blessing of Protection. That's all the same. Obviously, the big change here is Sanctified Plates. A lot of people expect this to be nerfed. I wouldn't surprise if it's nerfed somewhat. Armor increased by 20%, stamina increased by 10%, and damage done from area of effect reduced by 10%. That's probably the part that's going to be nerfed the most, is basically the avoidance. A lot of people are overhyping this because if you just look at, and I don't know what it is about other people's talents or whatever, or just their base class, but Ret has very low health. If you compare, like I compare my health to my other people on my raid team, and my health is like so much lower. Even if I'm at the same item level or higher item level than them, my health is like 20k lower. So the stamina is the least they could do. The 10% stamina I see absolutely no issue with whatsoever. The armor increase is fine. Makes us good against physical attacks, right? So we're not necessarily, DKs are good against magical attacks because they have, AMS and stuff. Armor, would make us better against physical attacks. I think that's fine as well. And then the avoidance being at 10%, I could see some qualms with. I could see that being reduced down to 5% or somewhere in between 5 and 10. I could see it staying at 10 too. But, I could definitely see this being nerfed. I wouldn't worry about it being nerfed too much as long as as long as we can get a stamina increase to put our health in line with other classes, and then maybe keep some of that avoidance, even up to 5%. I think that would be a really good talent, even if it was nerfed a bit. I'm not saying I want it to be nerfed, of course, but I kind of expect it to be. And even if it is, I think it's kind of fine as long as we get something meaningful from it. I want the stamina increase. I want the avoidance. I'd be really happy with that as a raider, at least. Down here, we still have Unbreakable Spirit. Still have After Image. Still have Judgment of Light. Seal of Mercy. Strength of Conviction. This is like more of like a prot type talent over here, just like you have Ret talents over here. Again, this is mostly from my Ret Paladin perspective. Crusader's Reprieve. Your Crusader Strike and auto attack range is increased by 3 yards, and Crusader Strike heals you for 2% of your maximum health. So what this is really good with is, and I can't imagine like not wanting to take this. So Crusading Strikes, your auto attacks become Crusader Strikes. So if your auto attacks are just healing you for 2% of your maximum health, that is insane. That's like an insane amount of leech, even for a two-handed weapon. Maybe this will get nerfed. Something might happen with this. That's actually really good. And then you can also go into Zealot's Fervor with the auto attack speed. You can get extra things of Crusader Strike. You have like some really high healing options that don't really hamper yourself too much. Actually, I guess with Crusading Strikes, you would not want to have improved Crusader Strike up here, because there'd be no charges of it. So that's actually kind of a redundancy that they'll have to make sure you can't take both of those in some way. I didn't even notice that before. So this replaces Crusader Strike, but you can still take a thing that gives you 2 charges of Crusader Strike. So they'll have to fix that in some way. So that's very powerful. We'll see if that stays the way it is. We have Face Armor. Word of Glory grants 20% bonus armor. This would be something that, again, you could take if you were getting rid of something else that you didn't really need. And this also will, it kind of stacks with Guided Prayer over here, which casts a Word of Glory on yourself when you take damage below 25%. So Getting some extra armor after that is really good. Of course, if anything is, if the thing that's bringing you below 25% health is physical damage, at least. We still have like the Incandescence Touch of Light talent node. Don't know what the point of it is. It still does almost no damage. It is what it is. Seal Crusader is changed. Auto attacks do additional holy damage. Again, auto attacks, Crusader Strike. Some synergy stuff there. Most of this stuff is the same. They reworked Light of Dawn, Seal of Order. There's now Fading Light. Down here, we have Divine Toll. Like I already talked about some of the stuff, so I'm trying not to go into everything in detail. Divine Toll, there is Divine Resonance, which we already know, and then there's Quickened Invocation, cooldown reduced by 15 seconds. I think that's more of like a Mythic Plus one instead of single target, where you might want that Judgment being cast every 5 seconds after for some more holy power. Divine Resonance is really good for AoE too, though, so I don't know exactly which one will be better. Yeah, my thoughts on the bottom of this tree. So I kind of like everything up here for the most part. As you said, as you can see, I didn't really have anything too negative to say about it. I kind of think this will be nerfed, but don't want it to be nerfed. What I see happening here is right now you can actually take every good thing at the bottom, right? And I think I would like to see that be changed. I don't know exactly how, but I would really like to see Ret be funneled to the right side and maybe Holy and Prot funneled to the left side a little bit. Right now you just take everything. Like what I'm giving up is 4% haste and 1 second cooldown on Judgment, which 4% haste is nice, but even at this point in the patch I already have quite a bit of haste. Like I have like 33 or 34% base haste. So without, let's say I had 4% from this talent, I'd still have like 30% haste. So it's like, it's not that huge of a deal. And it's something that I could make up for in like sockets and stuff like that. So that's all I have to give up to get all these nodes. Now, how do you get around this? Probably just by putting some really, really good stuff that a Ret would want down here as filler in between these. So you like kind of have to take them too or something. Maybe if they let Crusader's Reprieve be extremely powerful, maybe moving that down in here somewhere on the right side to where, obviously it may, other like Prot would want Crusader's Reprieve too, probably. So that makes that difficult. But they're going to have something to do down here. So you're not just taking every single one. It's fine, but I think it's just kind of lame, right? It's kind of lame just to take everything. Like, oh, we just pick every talent. So on the Paladin side, you kind of get to a point where you don't have enough choices to where you can just take everything. And then what we're going to talk about on the Ret side over here is that there's too many choices and you can't even really complete a build. And that'd be my major, feedback with that. So biggest things here is I kind of like it. I really like the Turn Evil moved up here. Anything that's like this, that's really niche, I think it's important to have close to the top or just really easy access to it to where you're only taking it when you need it, whatever. You can get rid of it without much of a worry or much of a hamper to yourself. And yeah, I like most of the stuff on the Paladin side. The bottom is going to be the issue. We're going to see this be changed, I'd imagine. The layout of the bottom part. It's just the way it is. It's just gonna have to be the case. If not, I mean, it's just gonna be lame. Like, it's cool, like we'll have all the throughput, but it's not gonna have any kind of single target AoE Mythic Plus. Doesn't matter what you're doing. You just take all these nodes. So it's kind of lame, but if that's what it is, that's the way it is. We'll move over to the Ret side where we have the complete opposite problem, where we have way too many things. So you can see down here, I actually don't even have any of the final nodes selected. Part of that is an issue because it's not like super powerful things. So Divine Auxiliary it seems like a pretty good talent where it's granting you 3 holy power. So I think in most builds you'd want to grab that. In Final Reckoning or Execution Sentence, whichever one, they're so easy to get to. Again, you'd probably grab that. One of these in most builds. You'd want this auxiliary. Vanguard's momentum is extremely strong the way it's tuned right now. So in most builds, again, you're gonna want to grab this. It's just like it makes you such a good execute class as well. Physical presence, not all of your damage is physical, but it does increase your physical damage by 20%. Now the fire damage by 10% is a little bit more interesting because that's your Wake of Ashes. You can make it to where your Blade of Justice and Expurgation. Physical and Holy Strike damage. So you can make them do physical damage, or you can make them do fire. Or radiant damage or whatever, and then that kind of plays into it. So you'd have to actually grab Holy Crusader and then physical presence as well. Anyways, the biggest point is it's hard to get to these things, and we'll talk about why with the way this is set up a little bit. So no huge issues at the top. It's making you take Divine Storm as like one of your main abilities. It's kind of odd. It's not really a Ret Paladin's main ability anymore, although it's fine. I understand it was, you know, like especially like if you look at classic WoW right now, right? They're about to head into ICC and stuff, and Divine Storm becomes like, you know, the ultimate ability for Ret Paladins there. It's not really the way it is now, but you know, it is what it is. There are some optionalities here, like you don't have to take Healing Hands. I don't, you know, I kind of took it just to kind of make Guided Prayer even better. But like you don't have to take that, obviously. And that gives you another talent point to go down here and maybe take Auxiliary. But the biggest problem is I feel like, for me at least, it feels like if I want to take kind of like these new talents that get rid of, so like this gets rid of my Crusader Strike button and this gets rid of my Consecration button. And to take these things, I have to like give up something else. Whereas their stated goal was we wanted to get rid of some button bloat, right? Now it's kind of fine if that's via talents and instead of you pruning the abilities away. It can be fine, but not if we have to choose between taking these talents that remove button bloat and you know, losing DPS, right? So you can take these talents that remove your button bloat, but you have to keep your button bloat if you want to do damage. I think that's a really bad choice. I think that's a really, just feels terrible. I don't think other classes really have to do this. It's like, yeah, you know, if you choose more active buff type talents, right, then you do more damage. That's historically how WoW has been. If you choose like the harder talent over the passive talent, you do more damage. That is the way it's always been. But if your stated goal is that we have too many buttons, then you just need to remove the buttons. It shouldn't be like a choice. Like, and that's for any class or spec. If the stated problem is that you have button bloat, well, you just need to remove the buttons. It shouldn't be, well, you can remove the buttons, but it's going to cost you damage. I don't think that's a very healthy way to go about it. I think that's a very, very negative thing to do. And by having to put these talents in the way it is right now, you're kind of like giving up on other things. The other issue is, so this is like an AoE build once again. I was saying this is like a Mythic Plus build. So like I wanted to have the cleave abilities. So like Judgment Cleave, Blade of Wrath Cleave. I don't even know where that's at. I might already have it selected. But Blade of Wrath Cleave. Like I want or Crusader Strike Cleave. You know, I wanted to get those things to make sure that I have all the cleave options, right? And you know, I don't even have every option, but once you put the talents into these things, I think maybe having the 2 ranks of it is the issue, right? So additional 4 targets. So if these were only 1 and 1 there, then I have 2 more talent points and I can kind of like complete my build in a way. I think having 2 ranks of that's kind of the issue. It's just not allowing me to complete a build. You can kind of complete a single target build without as much issue, but if you really wanted to complete your multi-target build, it becomes much more of an issue. As you see right now, I only have 1 capstone. I suppose you'd want at least 2. The way this is set up, you know, you could maybe even get like 3 or maybe even 4, but definitely 3. And I only have 1 right now, and you know, that is what it is. If you, the other thing is, if you're gonna keep Vanguard's momentum this strong, maybe just make it 1 talent point, because if it's gonna be strong, people are gonna take it either way. Maybe make that 1. So it might just be an issue of too many ranks, but if nothing else, it's too many talent choices. You just aren't able to quite complete your builds the way it is right now. And, you know, I think that could be definitely an issue. As far as, I did want to talk about the Avenging Wrath versus Crusade thing. I'm kind of like in a minority here. I'm not someone who like loves Crusade in the way it plays. Like having more haste and stuff is cool, but like my initial attraction to Paladin back in the day, because like I didn't start maining Paladin until Warlords, but back in the day I loved Avenging Wrath. It should give you crit when you have Avenging Wrath on, right? And so having to take this through so one thing I was fighting for in the beta was to have have that just be baseline still, right? Have the crit be baseline. You know, they did not decide to do that, so instead you have to choose a talent if you want that crit. I think that, and having the 1 minute cooldown is fine, but I really would like to see these be competitive with each other. Like I said, I think it's very possible might be taken from Mythic Plus, just so you can have wings up for every single pull. That'll allow you to compete with like the highest, more damage classes. 20% crit's a lot of extra damage, even without Crusade and all the bonus from Crusade. 20% crit during your wings is a lot of damage, plus the actual, damage increase from the wings. So having that up for every pull will be pretty big. That's my belief for Mythic Plus. But I'd like to see it be competitive, even for like single target, even for raid. It doesn't have to be as good, but I would love to see it be competitive because I think there's something. Again, I go back and forth on the class fantasy thing. I don't want class fantasy to like kill my spec. Like, oh, well, we have to have, like, for example, I think in some ways Divine Steed is class fantasy that kind of hurts the spec. They're trying to make it better. They took it off the global cooldown. I appreciate all that. But I don't want it to hurt the spec, but sometimes, like, I do want the class fantasy that helps the spec. And I think that the crit on the wings is just something that's so iconic with Paladin. Paladin in general, Rat Paladin too. It's so iconic, and I hate to see that being stripped away. And so I would love that crit option to, since it's not going to be baseline, it is what it is. But I would love to see it just become, more competitive. Because right now it's likely that Crusade will still probably be better for like a single target raid fight or whatever, and that's fine if it's better. That's not that it might has to be better than Crusade. It's just that I like that. It's just a personal preference. Maybe it's an old school preference. I don't know, but I would definitely like to see that. So, other than that, I like the direction of everything. This is a much better. So Tuesday night when I got on after my raid, this was kind of a dumpster fire. This is much better than what it was on Tuesday. I love the guided prayer. I'll reiterate that a couple things from Tuesday again. I really want to keep the guided prayer. Do not take this away. It's a defensive. Obviously, I like Shield of Vengeance. Another defensive. That's 2. Divine Protection. That's 3. None of them are overpowered, but they're all good. This one actually buffs up your Divine Protection and stuff, of course, to make it better. So and then you have, of course, your Divine Shield. What I think they're listening to about the Divine Shield aspect of things is that many times in like a raid fight or even a Mythic Plus encounter, you might be saving your Divine Shield for a really important thing that you're going to need your Divine Shield for. Like, okay, I have to clear these things on the floor with my Divine Shield, or I have to soak this with Divine Shield, so I can solo soak something or whatever. And oftentimes you're using your shield as a utility instead of a defensive. So I would really, and to keep Sanctified Plates at least somewhat strong, as I mentioned, I understand it could get nerfed, but if we can have a passive defensive buff and then keep Guided Prayer as an option and keep, obviously keep Shield of Vengeance, I don't think they're getting rid of that, and keep Divine Protection as a passive, I think that's just going to monumentally help the class in general, and specifically the spec of Ret Paladin stay alive better. So those are the biggest things I want to see. And then I just want to be able to like complete my builds a little bit easier. Would be my other thing. Like, I don't care, like, tune Ret to be wherever strength you need it to be, whether that's in the middle of the pack or maybe you want it to be a little bit stronger for a while since you're putting all this work into it. Obviously I wouldn't complain about being like, in the top 5 or something of damage, but I would just love more than anything to be able to like complete the builds, because there's like a lot of cool build potential here, but it's really hard to complete them. And that, by complete them, I don't mean clicking every single talent. I just mean getting everything that makes sense in the build. Being able to take every AoE talent for Mythic Plus, being able to take every single target talent for, for a single target raid boss, while also kind of like the way it's worked now, I have to take talents to get rid of the button bloat. I'd like to get rid of the button bloat plus enjoy the new builds that I can do, right? I don't think that's too unreasonable of a thing to think. So that's my feedback right now. As I've said, I'll at least be doing 1 video a week. It's technically my 2nd video this week. I will be trying to give feedback as we go as well, just like I did in the beta, and hopefully that can help out. But yeah, as always, I do ask you to please subscribe to the channel. That helps me out a lot. And other than that, everybody, have a good one.